The stats are a lie. Take it with a grain of salt. Stay tuned to find out exactly what I mean by this on this week's episode of Prime Property. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode and market watch of Prime Property. So glad you could join me here today. The month of March stats came out last week, and like I was warning you before, take it with a grain of salt, like a giant grain of salt. You have to remember, half the month was a roaring, super strong, multiple offers on every type of property out there, and then we dropped off significantly with the announcements of the pandemic. But regardless of what they're saying, here are the numbers that you'll be seeing and hearing about in the next few weeks, okay? So sales around 8,000, up 12.3%. Prices around 900,000, up 14.5%. And listings are around 14,500, up 3% from last year. Now, all of those numbers look great, but they're not true because the first half of March 2020 was so strong compared to March 2019, it makes up for the crappy 2 weeks that we had in the latter half of March, okay? So similar to when I was comparing numbers before and after the introduction of the foreign buyer tax in 2017, this time I'm gonna be looking on a week-to-week basis because it's changing so rapidly. So here are the numbers since I started recording the numbers from the start of March, and we're on week 5 right now. So you can see that we have about 600 new listings and about 179 sales, leaving us with roughly a 3.35 weeks of inventory. Now, the listings are down a bit, the sales are down a bit from last week, but you can see that the activity is hovering around the same. We're still around that 3.3 area. So you may be asking, because we're staying around that 3.3 area, is this the market norm that we're gonna see during the COVID-19 norm per se? I would argue probably not. The good is that we're no longer dropping as steep anymore. The bad is that it's still a drop off nonetheless, okay? So if you have a look at the chart over here, you can see that the pandemic was announced when there's a surge in listings, which is the blue line. So you can see that it spikes up, and that the orange line is the property sold, and that also went up, but now that they're both trending downwards, which is kind of what I expect for the short term because activity should coming down to zero. Will it flatten out at some point, this kind of trending downwards? Probably, but it's probably going to flatten down closer to zero, meaning that there's no activity at all. Now, if we compare the weekly numbers to last year at the same week, you can see that we're going to see a massive drop off, and you can see that over here. If you look at the chart, we're almost at half our transactions from last year. And this is because usually around this time of the year is when the market tends to trend up. But in 2020, we're currently going the other direction. So it's the exact opposite. That's why you're going to see such a big spread. Now, when we're looking at this chart, I expect this to continue going this way because of everything I was talking about before. So given what we're seeing right now in the market, you can expect the trends to continue going down. So the question that I'm being asked a lot right now is, should I be buying right now to find a deal? You know, so my answer has always, yes, you could find a deal, but I wouldn't say be expecting a deal per se, because it just really depends on how or like what your definition of a deal really is, right? So if your deal is saying, I'm gonna see 50% off market value, I would say you're probably not gonna see it. But if your deal is about 5 to 20% off, yeah, you can probably catch a seller who absolutely needs to sell right now, and you can probably get that kind of discount. Now, I've been telling a lot of my clients who need to sell, basically hold off, because if you do the math, it really just dictates that if you can defer the mortgage with the mortgage deferral program, you're going to lose less money by not selling at a discount right now because there's not enough buyers. Right now, like the mortgage situation is kind of out of whack. Things are changing, conditions are being added because of the pandemic. So it's constantly changing right now. So if you are buying, buyer beware. Make sure you're ready. Make sure you have enough emergency funds if this goes along. You don't want to be strapped in between a deal and not having to pay your mortgage for your existing property or rent right now. Now, the government right now is kind of flooding the market with tons of money, and the banks are making it more difficult to borrow. But all of this is kind of like you got to keep an eye on what's happening on your personal situation because everybody is on a case-by-case basis. So regardless of what everything is, as promised, I will show you the week-to-week changes in pricing and activity. So here's the micro markets. First thing, we'll look at condos. You can see that it took a really big drop in pricing. It almost dropped 10%. One may think that a 10% drop each week in the coming weeks is given, but I suspect the ones who had to sell were the ones that needed to sell, right? So the prices came down a bit. So if you kind of had to close on the property because you bought something and you needed the funds for selling, you had to sell at that point. So you would take a discount. Now, if you look at the days of market and the listing percentage, it's still a very strong market. Like it's still a little bit over 2 weeks, which is very good. And the market list percentage is still over 100%, which means people are paying more than they're asking on average. So it's not like a buyer's market. Now, if you look at the freeholds, subdivisions and towns, same thing as last week, like I told you. The amount that actually got sold is so little that I wouldn't even bother looking at the prices. It's going to fluctuate just depending on what kind of town you're buying in, sorry, and what area. But if you look at just the days on market and the listing percentage, you can see that they're both still under 2 weeks, and the market percentage that they're sold for is over 100%. So like I said last week, because these two segments of the market were so strong before all of this happened, I expect them to survive the longest without like a massive drop off, just surely because of the demand that we saw before the market took a turn. Now, lastly, we look at detached prices. The prices stayed somewhere around the same. Days on market increased a little bit, listing percentage went down a little bit, which means the demand is coming down, but it's good to see that it's not a big, steep price drop off, okay? Ultimately, as a whole, the market is slowing down even more, and I continue to expect this in the short term. For everyone that has a lot of time right now and are wondering if they should be getting ready to buy when we come out of this, I would argue yes, okay? Now, the reason I say that is we still have a shortage of housing, and the fundamentals of Toronto in terms of real estate investing should revert back to the norm. How fast? I'm really not too sure. But let me leave you with a little bit of perspective, okay? If prices fall 10% from where they are, like right now, okay, that means the prices will revert back to April 2019, which is exactly a year ago. If prices drop 20%, from the current prices, we're going to revert back to prices in January 2018. So a little bit more than 2 years ago. So what you are interpreting that is, whether you wait for price drops or prices revert back, that's completely up to you. But unless you have to sell right now, you're not losing money in the market. It's just reverting prices depending on when you bought the property. So right now I am taking calls on my clients to see those who want to kind of increase their portfolio and get ready, or maybe just personal home, take advantage of the time when we come out of it. And if you do want to schedule a call to me to kind of make a personal plan that's catered specific to you, I'll leave my contacts right here so that we can have a chat, okay? Until next time, stay safe, please, and your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.